Okay, tonight is Genesis chapter 15.
After these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield, and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir.
See, the ongoing little theme here is, we've already heard on a couple of occasions that God has made certain promises to Abraham. His promise was that he's going to have lots and lots of descendants, okay? Right, so that being his promise, that there be lots and lots of descendants, yet there's no, it has to start with one, right? And up to this point, they haven't had any baby, right, or any son. So, with that as a backdrop, right, so you see here, when this is the Lord is speaking to Abram and telling him, fear not, I'm thy shield, thy exceeding great reward. So in other words, don't worry, everything is under control here. And yet, that's good, everything under control, but I still don't see anything happening here. And again, that can sometimes be a lesson to any of us, right? We feel like, gee, everything's under control, but what about this and what about that? And it seems like this has to happen, that has to happen. All right, so this is his concern. So now Abram says, hey, what's up with this? I'm still childless, so should I be like looking at other possibilities here? Like I have this guy living in my house. He's my primary guy who would be my heir if I die childless. This man named Eliezer of Damascus. So I mean, should I be looking at him then and thinking, well, all right, so maybe he'll have children, and maybe he already had children. I don't know, maybe it's going to pass through him, and that's how I'm going to have, he'll be my heir, and then his children will be like my grandchildren, and they'll go that way. Right? In 3 it says, so Abram says, so behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is my heir, right? So he's pointing to this guy saying, maybe this is the guy. He's trying to figure out, and we do that sometimes. We say, all right, well, it seemed like I felt like God was saying this, but maybe he wasn't exactly saying that. Maybe he really meant that I need to figure something else out, so that's why he's saying, oh, all right, yeah, you said they have lots of descendants, so maybe this guy here who's taking care of my house, he's going to be the one, right? It'll pass through him. So he's saying that to God. Is that what you're talking about?
And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness.
So Abram asked about this guy Eliezer, and said, okay, God, is this the guy I should be looking at? And God said, no, that's not him. Okay, he's not going to be your heir. Your heir is going to come, how's he put it, your heir is going to come from your own bowels. In other words, it's going to be somebody who's born from you, right? Your own son. It's going to be your own son, not this other guy who just happens to be working in your house. All right, you're going to have a son, and that's going to be who your seed's going to come from. All right, so don't worry about it. And just to reinforce this, come on outside with me. All right, and so they go outside, and he says, look up at the stars there. Okay, you see all the stars? He says, want to try counting all those stars? And he's like, I can't count all the stars. He says, that's how it's going to be with your descendants, all right? It's just like you can't count the stars, not going to be able to count all the people that are going to come from you, all the grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all the way down through the ages, right? It's going to be uncountable. I think in a previous chapter it said, talking about like numbering the sands on the earth, right? It was another way it was compared to. Now on this one it's comparing to the stars in the sky, right? Can you count the stars? Well, you're not going to be able to count your descendants, all right? So again, reinforcing, don't worry, it's gonna happen, right? And so in 6, all right, it's kind of a key verse here, because it says he believed in the Lord and he counted it to him for righteousness, right? In other words, that God counted it to Abram for righteousness. In other words, that he was willing to believe him in spite of his what he could see seemingly contradicting what he's being told, all right? He's being told you're going to have lots and lots of heirs, and yet I don't have the one to start with, and I'm now like 80-some years old, all right? And so it seems to me like we're running out of time here, and maybe he was 75 in the previous chapter. Nonetheless, he's getting older here, right? So but it says he believed God, And we believe that that's an accurate statement. It says he believed him. And so, and then God, knowing he believed him, it says he counted it to him for righteousness, right? That he would trust God enough to say, okay, if you say it, I believe it. Even though my logical mind says I don't see what's going to happen, but if you say it, then I believe it, and I'll go forward as if that's going to be an actual true fact. You know, even in later chapters, like in the New Testament, there's reference made to Abraham, where it says that it talks about his faith, and it says that he believed that God when it came to this, right? And in one other case, I'm going to read about in a few chapters that Abram believed God, right? And so that illustrated his faith, all right? Because faith is believing in something that you can't see. So here was the case where I can't see what's going to happen, but I believe it because God said it.
And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, Take me a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away.
See, sometimes when we're trying to maybe grasp something that we feel is going to happen, or that we feel God says is going to happen, we sometimes ask God to confirm it in some way. Maybe we'll ask for an experience. I've seen this happen many times. People pray for experiences. So they say, ask God to confirm something with a dream or a vision or something, all right? Something to let them know that, yeah, this is really going to happen, okay? And so this is what Abram seems to be doing here, right? It says in verse 8, it says, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it, the land that referred to in verse 7, all right? So he's looking for God to confirm it in some way, all right? And now the next several verses are going to lay out how that occurs, and as you'll see as we read it, I mean, it's not clear exactly how it confirms it, but a lot of times I've heard people testify of things that when they're looking for certain confirmation, then something happens, they have some dream, and they say, okay, that dream confirmed it to me, and when I hear the dream, I'm like, I don't know if I would think that it meant that, right? But yet it confirmed it to them, and so that was okay, right? That they felt that confidence that God was speaking to them, right? And to me, I mean, in my opinion, right? That's you're going to see that in the next few verses, right? This is the kind of experience that Abram has, and again, to him it confirmed that God was speaking the truth here, right? So we'll go with that, okay? All right, so here's how it goes. In 9 it says, take these couple of animals, a heifer, a she-goat, a ram, turtle dove, young pigeon, right? And kill them all, right? Kill them all. And then furthermore, in verse 10, it says he took them all and divided them in the midst, right? And at first I was thinking that meant he just put like one here, one there, but that's not. He cut them all in half, right? Basically, he cut them in half and kind of lined them up. All right, but the birds, except for the birds, maybe they were too small, I don't know, all right? But so for the animals, he divided them in half and laid them there, okay? And then in 11, this is when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, he drove them away, all right? So this is the first part of it, all right? That he's kind of laid out these dead animals or halves of animals, and the birds came as if they were going to eat it, but he chased them away because this is something that God's going to illustrate something using these dead animals.
And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full.
First part of this is he has a dream. Okay, so in the 12, deep sleep fell upon Abram, and then this horror and great darkness fell upon him. And now the Lord's speaking to him in the dream, telling him things that are going to happen in the future. Right? And then these things did come to pass, right? So this is a valid statement that the Lord is making to him, all right, where he says, Know of a surety thy seed shall be a stranger in the land, and they shall serve them, and they'll afflict them 400 years. He's referring to the time when the Israelites were in bondage, right, in Egypt, right, when eventually Moses was used to deliver them, right? So he's referring to that time, that he's going to be his descendants, Abram, that it's going to be the house of Israel. So he says there'll be a time when your people will be serving for 400 years in a strange land, which is Egypt, right? And then 14, also that nation whom they'll serve, I'll judge them, and afterward they'll come out with great substance, right? These are all things that are going to happen later, right? And 15, thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, to be buried in old age. And then the fourth generation is when this will all start to roll, okay? So he's explaining things that are going to happen in the future. So that in the dream, he's saying, well, and clearly that can't happen if you don't have any descendants, all right? So he's saying, I'm not only going to have descendants, but here's a story that goes with them, all right? Here's what's going to happen to them in the future. And as we see later on in the Bible, that's exactly what happens, all right? So that was prophecy that he was giving him in this dream, all right? So that's part one of this experience.
And it came to pass that when the sun went down, and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites, and the Kenizzites, and the Cadmonites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Rephaims, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgasites, and the Jebusites.
Okay, so verse 17 is the second half of the experience, right? And like I say, if it wasn't, I read some descriptions of this and said, okay, is that what that's supposed to mean? Okay, and then in verse 17 it says, it came to pass when the sun went down and it was dark, it says, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between the pieces of the dead animals. All right, that basically you saw like a light going back and forth between the pieces of the animals. All right, and what that apparently is supposed to signify is that this covenant between God and him, this agreement, this contract, this covenant, right? That they, in essence, the two halves of the animals, or the two sides lined up, was supposed to be like God and man, and the light going back and forth meant that this was God was sealing this covenant. All right, so that's what it was supposed to mean. All right, like I said, I myself wouldn't necessarily get that out of reading that. All right, but that's what it's supposed to mean. Is God was showing him that he was sealing this, and that he himself, Abraham, didn't have to do anything, right? Because God was going to make it happen at this point. He said it, he put it in motion, he made the promise, and it's going to happen, all right? So that's what the light bouncing back and forth is supposed to mean, that it's God sealing this covenant between God and man, and then the halves of the animals lined up was God on the one side, man on the other side. And so now in 18 says, in the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, all right, saying that your seed's going to inherit this land, the land of Canaan. All right, and he's describing it from Egypt to the river Euphrates, all right, that this is where the boundaries are, all right, and then all the different people who were living there at the current time, all these different groups of people.